Hello golfers, welcome back to JD Golf TV, your home for playing better faster. Today's video is a swing analysis of world number one, Jon Rahm. We're going to discuss his fantastic golf swing, so let's get after it. First and foremost, and this is really important, if you're going to analyze somebody's golf swing, you better start out with their predominant ball flight, because an awful lot of the stuff that goes on with the setup of the swing is in reference to, well, he's trying to create this kind of flight. If we don't quite get that, folks, we might miss the whole darn point. So let's take a look. Jon Rahm has, now this is, I think this camera angle is a little off skew, but we're close enough. But he has got one whale of a weak grip. He is holding that golf club with a one knuckle open face left hand grip. So his left hand is in fade, open face. His right hand is neutral. Okay, how do we know that? Well, knuckle of the left hand, only one showing barely. And the V between the thumb and index finger of his left hand is going pretty much just barely to his right ear. Neutral, okay? This would be closer to a little strong, and then this one would be really strong if that line between the thumb and index finger was our reference for where the grip strength is. Does that make sense to you? Now, left hand, you can do it just by knuckles. Okay, which by the way has something to do with how much bend you'll see in his left wrist, and he's got very little because his hand is so far turned to the left. So if you don't want to hit any more fades, this is not the grip for you. Now you'll also notice something really interesting about Jon Rahm, and I think it's really cool. He pretty much only ever fades his driver, which, by the way, folks, I think is terribly important. This idea of making the driver work both ways is a great way to make it work both ways at random, meaning the double cross comes back. So I love his strategy, which is just pound the fade. This one was pounded 315 in the air on 118 miles an hour. He did hit 5 degrees up on this golf ball. And folks, that is mighty cool. He hit 5 up on it, which of course helped his club path. And this is going to be real interesting when we get to this down the line view. His club path is going 3 degrees almost to the left. Now, this is really, really cool, because if we look at this golf swing over here, folks, aside from the fact that it's short, this is all draw. That is a draw golf swing if I have ever seen it. How do we know? The club is right along his right forearm. His left arm is in. If his handle was over this way, glove hand over here, left arm out this way, it would be a fade swing. But guess what? He doesn't fade it with his swing. He fades it more with his setup. How about that? When people start trying to fade it with their swing, that's when they start coming way over the top. And even though he and Collin Morikawa are hitting these tasty little fades, this club looks like a draw the entire time. Look at that. He's way too far inside, right? No. And I'll tell you what's going on. His golf club has pretty much reached the bottom of its arc here. Okay? Now, it's still coming from the inside of the target line. See, that's inside out impact. If I ever saw it, that is going inside out. But here's the trick. Inside out impact, yes, but he's swinging up on the golf ball. So now you look at this, oh yes, he absolutely murdered it. But you look at this golf swing and you go, wait a minute. His swing direction is 1.5 to the draw side, which is, okay, we're going to call that real neutral. But because he's swinging up, every degree upward this club moves into impact, makes the path, because it's an arc, remember the law of the circle, work leftward. So at 5 up, if he was swinging dead straight, it would be a 5 left path. If he was swinging 5 down, this path would be out to the right. It's a 3D arc. It's a pain in the butt, but you're going to trust me on that. So yes, despite the fact that he's got a decided fade path, it's actually because of the upward angle of attack. Got it? And you can see that right here. I mean, that video is really well placed right there, folks. That's the TrackMan camera. Okay, you ready for this? Oh, baby, look at that. Now, his golf ball flew terribly straight toward the target. Oh my, how's he doing? Right? Good golly. Isn't that gross? And it's going forever and ever and ever. That's kind of how he plays, isn't it? Let's look at some more stuff about how he did it. But let's start out with this view again. And the reason I'm starting out with this is it's very, very interesting the way that he hits this golf ball. How is it possible that this man could play? Whoa, I see a little shiftiness right off the golf ball. Isn't that cool? You can see he's moving into his right foot right off the bat. So he turns his hips a reasonable amount. I would say that is somewhere probably in only the 35-degree range, not a ton, okay? You see his right knee does move away from the target line a little bit, which helps us turn, folks. Or it's dragged there because he's turning his hips. Could be the other, right? One thing you might want to notice is that his right side of his belt is up. He's got some hip tilt. Okay, now, wait a minute. But he's so short back here. Look at how short this backswing is. Folks, I may have to say, don't try this at home. This man has got to be able to create a ton of force in a very, very short amount of time to reach almost 18 from that short of a backswing. And by the way, have you seen the size of this man's butt? He is a strong young man. That's the first thing we notice is the shortness. The second thing we notice would be that wrist. What's he doing with that wrist, folks? He is flexing his wrist. And what he's doing with that, you will notice that if we go back to this view and address, I will tell you right now, any great golfer with that grip is going to fight a wide open face. They will fix it at the top with flexing this wrist. That's revving the motorcycle, if we will, giving the shaft the twist, if you will, closing the club face with this wrist. And whenever this wrist flexes in this manner, as opposed to the right wrist is doing the opposite, it's bending back like holding up a pizza tray. Well, when the right wrist bends, that's called extended. This left wrist is called flexed. And yes, we should be able to use those terms because you have to call it something, right? So anyway, whenever that lead wrist flexes like this, it closes the face. So he started with a club face, maybe dangerously open for the normal person. But he flexed his wrist to square it back up. This is a lovely match. Now, if you didn't have his grip, but you flex the wrist, you may be fighting a really, really close club face. All right, so he squared the face up at the top. Got me? Now you can also see from this view that his left foot, whoa, what is this sucker doing? He's doing the step in. I'll be darned. He actually gets his foot completely off the ground and steps into the ball. That's like one of our step drills. Slam on that lead left foot right there, baby. And as he does that, he's also lowering the club, which is not really laid off. It's so short that it should still be pointing over this way. It may be a hair laid off, but remember something, folks. People are making way too much stuff out of this. Okay, there's his club shaft. It's pointing well outside the target line. Okay, fine. So he is stepping into it with a little rotation, not a ton of torso rotation, but a step in and some hip turn, right? That's the sequence, right? He steps in, turns, lowers the club. Now, the only way that this club can lower without changing pitch of the shaft, it's a big deal, is if there is some force, that would be his arms, not his body. That step in doesn't make that club shaft move down in this way, right? He is lowering his arms, both of them together, his hands, well, they're attached, lowering straight downward, which is, just so you know, again, a decided draw move. This is really interesting. This is all draw, folks, all draw. Hands are right in front of my biceps muscle. So I was going to teach you a draw. This would be it. Look how much the left arm is in, which is, if we're talking about the target line, that white line we saw a little bit ago, his left arm is way inside the target line as opposed to being out here. So he has a lot of swinging the entire club down. He's putting a force against the entire club. He's not just pulling down the grip end vertically. Absolutely not. If he pulled the grip end vertically, the club shaft would try to line up with that force. You see no pitching or change of the angle of the club shaft here. That means he's just lowering everything altogether. He is creating a force through the center of mass. No rotation. There you go. Right? Straight down with the hands. That's a lovely move. Then from there, he's going to start turning some with the torso. But wait a minute. He does not get super open, even for a fader. What in the world? He's just a little bit open there. What did he do? Well, for that, folks, what we've got to understand is the other view. Doink. Look at that. Pretty much right out of the middle of the face. Let's look on this view. We have that short backswing. You can see that the step in occurs. He literally, even though he has shifted off the ball very little sway, probably about in the neighborhood of an inch of sway. His head has not swayed much at all. His left foot comes completely off the ground. You can almost see this effect. He is pushing into the ground. He's pushing down this way. And that kind of keeps him from moving backward. I hope that makes some sense. He's driving this foot into the ground. And we know he's got a little foot problem back there, right? Club foot. But still, it's very cool. So and this is not unlike what our ground reaction forces would tell us. So he's already starting to drive the lower body this way. He's got a step in of his left foot, unweights it. He's on the right foot only. Then he steps in, and as he's stepping in, I guarantee you, he is pushing off the inside and ball of the foot of that right foot. Guaranteed. Now, how does he get this not very turny? This is not like Colin Morikawa's fade, who's very rotational. How does he get this ball to not go left with that draw swing? I want you to watch that glove hand now. Look at our boy go. He has a tremendous amount of arm swing. You can call it pulling the club handle, right? He's got a lot of pull along the length of the shaft, right? As he's coming down, he's basically, you may have seen me do this before, he's basically pulling the shaft. Now, it's not in a straight line, but it's hard to draw a circle, okay? He's basically pulling that sucker through so that the face cannot close, okay? Even though this left hand is still flexed, which is a closed face, he's pulled it so far forward that the face can't close. And look, there's no turnover, all right? That ball ain't going left, folks. See that? Now, if you're trying to draw the ball and you have those hands like that, you better have one hell of a strong grip. Now his club flies away, and that's the club doing it to him. I guarantee you he's not turning it over right there. I think that's the club just taking off on him. So he's got some serious footwork. He doesn't move his upper body forward so he can hit up on the ball. He doesn't jump a ton, does he? Not a ton of jump, right? He's got some linear motion toward the target, and he's got some rotation. Not a lot of jump. You can see that left leg never really. You know, it's really interesting. He definitely comes off the ground, so this is really cool. The force plate has told me he may have more vertical force than we might think because you can't see the force. Even though he never straightens out his left leg fully. See that? He still may have pushed down into the ground right about, well, truly speaking, right around this time where he is just absolutely spiking that ground. Remember the other arrow? This one's going this way. He's pushing himself backward and in a turning motion. That's kind of cool. And a really cool thing that we might get something out of is this visualization. Basically, this is, gosh, can you say TP anymore, folks? This is a TP, okay? And these remind me of the ground reaction force arrows. Notice he stays pretty nicely inside the TP, okay, until very late in the follow through. That's a good way to be able to hit up on the golf ball, by the way. Okay, being backward a little bit, having the ball position wicket far forward, but staying back there in that TP is a really cool way to hit that driver miles and miles and miles, which, by the way, would be really fun. I wish I could find out what it's like. I used to be able to go 115 with my speed. Now you know it's only about 100 on a good day. Okay, so here's a 6-iron. Yep, it's almost 100 miles an hour with a 6-iron. Well, so much for me. Same idea. Very weak grip. Boy, very similar move to his driver, isn't it? I would say that he does stay even more over the ball with an iron. How come that is, folks? Because the requirement's different. He needs to be hitting the ground out here after the golf ball, so he doesn't have nearly the amount of shift, right? At the top of the backswing, his spine is darn near vertical. That helps. Now he's got some shift, as we talked about. The left foot's still on weights. He's pushing. He's stepping on that left foot for sure, but he's also pushing off the trail foot this direction, right? He's stomping down on the lead. He's pushing away like a speed skater with the right. And we already talked about the grip, and there's a lot of pull along the handle. So he doesn't really let the club pass the head, past the handle through impact at all that you will see on some folks like Rory McIlroy. Yet he still hits it really hard with a very short swing. It's a burst of shifting and pulling down, swinging down the arms, a strong burst. It is a weak grip that forces him to have to flex the wrist. So he's kind of like squaring it up early, and then he's just pulling like a son of a gun as he goes through the golf ball. Yippee skippy. Even still, by the way, when he goes through, you can see he does rotate the glove logo. Right? So he does have some of this roll, the roll power, right? He does absolutely have some of that, which is helping him square it. Oh, I like that. Isn't that cool? But he's not real risky through the golf ball. Right? He's not squaring it up with his hands at all, so to speak. He's got a little bit of roll. He's got a little bit of wrist flexion early in the backswing all the way through the golf ball. This is a great way to hit the golf ball. Cool note, look at his feet still. This is indicative of not being a really huge turner. His right foot's still on the ground. This suggests more of a linear shifty kind of guy than full-on turning kind of guy. So this is actually, there his foot comes up. Look how late his foot comes up. Isn't that fun? And there's a 209-yard 6-iron. Oh, I don't know if I can like this guy. You will notice that Mr. Rahm stays in his posture like a superstar. In fact, this is a cool line. We call it, as you may remember, the hiney-liney. That's the technical term for this. You know, basically speaking, the tour average goes from an inch behind to an inch toward the target line, and he moves back right into his backswing. See that? That's a handy-dandy move. A lot of golfers that fight this thing called early extension. They're actually doing it on the backswing. They're moving out to their toes immediately on the backswing. Now he moves a little bit into his heel of his right shoe. Okay, but I call this back pocket back, this way, away from the target line. And coming down, his left pocket's back as well. Not as much as the backswing, right? But you can see that he's not coming up a whole ton, folks. That's pretty cool. What about Dunigan, you say? What about his driver? Can he possibly do that with a driver? Oh, yep, there's back on the backswing. And see, on the driver, oh my goodness, he comes a little away from the line. Folks, don't get upset about it. It's just fine. Basically speaking, this business people keep calling about early extension is this. If that hip moves toward the target enough to interfere with that right elbow, then you have a problem. If you extend enough that you can't rotate, not a problem here, then you have a problem. Otherwise, let's don't get too excited about that, okay? It's just not that big a deal. There is some room for early extension, or, I don't know, some guy named Jack Nicklaus definitely can't play golf at all. Well, folks, there are valuable things that you can take from these golf swing analyses, but they have to fit you. Everybody swings differently. You want to swing just like somebody else, you better be built exactly the same age, same strength, mobility, flexibility. You have to match what your own body can do. You can take some of Jon Rahm's golf swing and put it into yours, but you can't take all of it. And if you have one swing model, your only problem is the Hall of Fame of golf. The swings are all over the place. They've all found their own way. So I want you to be really careful about trying to find the way and copying this swing. And I want you to find your way. All right, get after it.